Hey everyone, this is Ivan at Plaudit. I just wanted to go over a quick video on how I got to, doing the editing for the drum session with claws. So we had two sessions mainly set up. One was on the time, one was on the click, and then one was free time. So we both liked his free time performance a bit more, and that's what I'm gonna really talk about. So in this session, as you can see, there's quite a bit going on, and let's kind of go over the standard process of what I do. So let's go ahead and get rid of all of this routing. Let's do that. And then let me go ahead and get rid of that plugin. So what we have is muting that, and then the verb. Cool. So let's go ahead and hear what was going on. So as you can see, it's a pretty well balanced kit as it is. I did some of the general balancing on the session already. So let's go ahead and do what I normally do, which is start off with the kick. So L kick sub is going to be my live kick. In other words, the drum kit I had, which was a 78 Ludwig. So just doing the live kick, and then let's also do live drums. So this kick is actually, I use a microphone called the Lewitt DTP 640 Rex. That is basically a single microphone capsule, or it's a single microphone, and it has two capsules. It has a dynamic and a large diaphragm condenser. So that way you could do the kick in and kick out trick. However, the reason why I use it is because it actually has a phase aligned capsule. So you have the dynamic and the condenser on the right next to each other, so they're actually lined up exactly. And when you kind of zoom into the actual kicks, here, let me go ahead and do that for you. Oh, there we go. Like going up to that transient, you actually don't have to worry about about the phase accuracy, because normally with kick in and out, you have to make sure it sounds good. And you have to make sure the phase aligns, because with low end, if you don't have your phase correction, then you're going to have a lot of issues with getting a proper sound. And I noticed that this microphone just handles everything really well. So this is the dynamic portion of it. Here, let's actually go over to this kick pattern on the free time. And then with the kick out, so you're getting that kind of fatty tone from it that you normally would. So when you have both of them together, and then going from there, I started with the kick in. So this is a mix gate. What it does is it's basically a gate, so that way once it's above the threshold, the audio goes out, and then it attenuates and kind of closes. That way you don't get as much bleed from other instruments. So do you see as that intensity there it basically stays open because the snappiness, and that's fine. It's not a big issue. It's mainly the quieter portions over here. And that little bit actually helps a lot. So that's what I was just trying to do to clean it up. You could do other methods and I'll show you later. But the next one is enabling this. So I grabbed this EQ. Since I'm using two microphones for the kick in is going to be the snappier one, so you don't need that much low end. I went ahead and high passed at 100 hertz. Then I got a little bit of this 367 that I'm ducking because it's not a really pleasant sound. Generally with drum shells, anywhere between like 3 to 400 is a good area to cut depending on the instrument or the shell. Then over here, I'm just kind of boosting the click frequency so you could hear that. And then let's go ahead and actually go to that faster portion here, just so I could explain the next part, which is going to be the 76. So this is an emulation of a 1176. I just basically set it up so that way it's evening out all the hits. So I'm getting like 3 dB-ish of gain reduction. Yeah, it's living around like 2-ish. And that's really all I needed to do for the EQing of the kick in. Kick out is something similar where I have my gate. I copy that preset. Now I'm using a PSP E27 here. It's actually a really nice plugin. I'm really cranking the crap out of the low end at the 63 hertz, so you could hear that. And then same thing, I have an 1176 that I'm just kind of leveling out. Oop. There we go. So I had to fix those settings. Same thing, I'm getting about 3 dB of gain reduction. Now I'm subbing it to this auxiliary. And then this compressor is the same thing, leveling it out even more. It's getting it to smoothen out, and it's really bringing out the transient with the way it was set up. Now moving forward to the snare, let me go ahead and bypass. This is my live snare. Here is what it sounds. So let's do this. Actually, hold on. Cool, so that's the general sound. And then snare, I did a gate. And then I used a 1081 emulator. So I'm high passing at 100, then I'm kind of boosting the 4.7K as well as 220. Nothing really crazy on the high end, so. It's kind of bringing out the liveliness I felt. Now 1176 again. As you can tell, it's not actually working until it's digging in. That's totally fine. It's balancing that. Snare bottom, I ended up really not using, so I'm not going to even worry about it. It was a bit too much for me. And then once I got here, then I used Tan, which is acoustic audio. Just for a little more compression, and then a Q2, because there's a lot of ringing there. Let's find that section. I think it was over here. And then that's it for the snare. Let's go ahead and now move to the toms. So this one took a little while. Generally what I do with all the toms is I will mute everything that the toms aren't doing, and the tom part that I have active is what I will do my editing to. And then you could even just do that if you wanted, because you don't want any extra ring if you don't need it. Like here, you can do this, CV, mute, just to kind of get it cleaner sounding. And it's up to you how you do it, but this is kind of what I do. And so this is what the drums sound like on their own. Let me go ahead and enable them. Same thing, ducking. These all have the same treatment. They're all being high passed at the same spot with a boost here, just to get the shell resonant and to get that attack that you want. Hey, guys, come back. And then from here, same thing, 1176. That way they kind of pop out a bit more. Now from here, I have this verb that I'm using. We'll do the verb later. But going into the main bus. I have this PG, which is a API copy for the 500 series module. I'm ducking just a little bit of the 250 for that overtone that you kind of get that it's unwanted sound. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'm ducking just a smidge of the 250. I feel that this EQ works really well for that. Then at the 2K, I'm boosting it substantially. That way we could get more crack out of the toms. Yep. And you can hear how well they come out. And then finally another 1176, getting just basic leveling. And kind of doing an overall compressor on each section allows them to live in their own space, I felt, and it kind of glues these individual clusters together. Now, after that, we have our cymbals. So let's go ahead and activate these. Cymbals are a little harder. Over here, I actually muted these talkback room mics just because they're a bit too much and I wasn't getting the sound I wanted. And as you could tell, I'm actually running no plugins on these. So first thing I'm doing is high pass at 400. As you can tell, those toms go away quite a bit. But let's go over here to a different part. There it is. Cool. Now from there, I have a de-esser because it gets a little brittle sometimes, especially with some drummers, how they play it. If they're hitting the stick just right, it's fine. Some drummers just kind of wail. So having a de-esser, I'm actually using the harsh high-end preset. It just helps to kind of duck those unwanted frequencies. So it helps a lot. Then I'm doing I had this enabled, I just took it off because it's really not needed. What I was doing is boosting 10K and I didn't have anything for the roll off, obviously because I had the EQ doing that over here. But a lot of the times it's because this plugin, which emulates a Pultec, this is their mastering EQ. It's very broadband and it sounds very good. What you'll do is I like to have it there because generally the characteristic of a tube offers a weight and it has a compression for the high end that I like. But I had it here and I ended up leaving it out. So this is what it sounded like with it. As you can see, it does a little, but it's actually not helping. And then same thing, I had this compressor, but compressing overheads is very, very weird. And I just didn't want to deal with it, to be quite frank. So now that we have all of those, let's go ahead and I'm gonna just enable group to make this easier. This is what we have. Now having that full section, let's go over here. So as you can hear, I even muted that out. Hi-hat mic, a little too much. So now let's double check that by going to the ride section over here. So as you could hear, I don't know if you hear that, this isn't ringing out enough. So what I'll do is just extend it out. Okay, so now, oop. So what I'll do is I'll snip that. mute, grab this part, and I'm gonna do a quick fade. There we go. And then same thing over here. Let's go ahead and get rid of this crossfade. Same thing. Same thing over here. It's not really ringing out too well. So what I'm going to do is that, get rid of these crossfades here. Because what happens is they'll come in too quick in this case, like, and you'll just hear them kind of popping, and that's what you don't want. So let's go ahead and extend that. Grab this crossfade, oh, right here. And then this one, let's go ahead and extend this one because that has a lot of resonance, and when you hear the other mics, since it's kind of a big fill for the drums overall for the toms, this will be a little better. Because do you see how these fades end one after another? This tom one is going to be the last one you hear, and they already kind of drop out evenly. So that is done. Okay, so with this next part, what we're going to do is no longer use the live kit. We're actually going to go into our sample kit. Let's go ahead and re-enable these tracks. These are now muted. We don't need solos for these. Alrighty. So I did 2 samples for the kick, 2 samples with the snare. It's pretty easy in this regard. So what I did is going over to this kick section. I wanted to really reinforce this, so what I ended up doing is used a sampler called Trigger 2. I have a 24-inch Ludwig, and this is what it sounds like. And that's providing me all the low end I wanted. Now, hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. That is without it. Here it is with it. It's really obnoxious, so that's why I dipped it down over here. Same thing over here. This is called the Black Kit. It is the it's really supposed to, I guess, emulate the Metallica kick. So there's a way you could do MIDI. I just prefer to use Trigger 2 because it was a fairly clean track. So here's with both of them. Now, what I'm also doing going into the reverb is I'm actually using the reverb from the Trigger 2. So I'm using samples to trigger my reverb because it's cleaner than having a bunch of noise. I'm just using a short plate. And then that being said, let's go into the snares for the samples. Here's our sample snare. That is our original snare, so let's go ahead and go over here. That is the same thing, trigger 2, and I'm using a Black Beauty. Now for the other snare, I am using I believe it's yeah, so just a generic snare that they have. That's like the super fat sound. So once we have that, and then I'm compressing them. Oh, mind you, I'm also compressing the kick for over here. I know I didn't mention that. Let's go ahead and do the kick and snare, and then I'll add the compressor. And then same thing for I'm triggering with a sample for my reverb. Let me go ahead and mute those. Now, what we have is this. Oop, blew up the speakers. Hold on. Let's go ahead and pretty fucking massive. So that's what I wanted to do. Finally, mix bus. 6034 is Mac DSP. I'm just believe I use their preset, which sounds like this. It's just providing some sonic clarity. Then I'm using another compressor, obviously the same thing in 1176. Let's hear that. As you can tell, I have the ratio at 20:1, so it's just super quick, very fast attack and release. I'm only getting the main peaky transients. Now, remember when I mentioned the cymbals over here that I had this muted, I'm using the program equalizer, the Plaudit, and finally a multiband for everything. So that is, let me go ahead and show you without the multiband and with it. This metering plugin I just like to have an overview of what is going on, and I can visually see everything. Now let's go ahead and show you what that does. And that's about it, man. That's kind of what I did for this. Like I said, I know it looks like a static mix, and that's really all it is. It's just drums. There isn't any additional instruments here, so you don't really have to focus too much about having to automate plugins or anything, or just general levels. Because once they sit well, especially with these samples, that's how you will get the sound. And like I said, cymbals, it's kind of hard. It's really, for cymbals, you have to mic it well. And with this session, we didn't have the luxury of breaking down the setup and tailoring it to claws. So that is one thing I will note, is that when he comes back and we do another session, we're going to be using the drum kit he wants. We're going to have it set up how he likes it with the cymbals selection that he has. And it's going to be a different sound because this setup was actually tailored for a different drummer that we were recording at the time for their band's debut record. So once we have Claus come back in with his stuff, it'll be a lot better. But yeah, cymbals, you don't really want to do too much. You just want to really duck, go for subtractive EQ, no compression, mess with the toms how you want it. But this was the overall sound that I wanted. I'm pretty proud of it. I think it sounds really good. So let's go ahead and get this free time final print over to him. Now I'm going to do two things. I'm going to send the WAV file and the MP3. However, the WAV, you don't need a 96K. I believe we're doing a video here, so let's drop it down to 48. And let's go final. Now this is the typical bouncing process. You could do online bouncing and offline bouncing. I chose to do offline because everything here is done in the box. If I was running some of my compressors, my outboard gear, you would have to do an online bounce because you have to route the gear and you have to worry about latency. But sometimes, depending on what I'm doing for recallability, I'll just print it. That way you can mess with it inside the box and you don't have to worry about it. But like I said, in this case, we have almost 3 minutes of audio and there's no point of doing an online bounce. The quality was recorded at 2496, so it's fairly dynamic. And to me, I prefer that sample rate, especially now with technology. It's easier to run with this kind of sample rate. Get the high fidelity you want, so when you start doing time alignment and phase adjustments, you don't have to worry about that. And speaking of phase, I didn't mention this just because we had the snare bottom muted. If you were to use a snare bottom microphone, you definitely would want to do a phase or polarity flip. So you would have to have that enabled. So that is one thing I would like to mention before I finish that. But yeah, that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Ivan from Plaudit Studios, going over Claus's drum mix. Thank you so much.